What is English for life insurance and how does it apply in a cross-border context? In today's shorty episode, where in 10 minutes or less we pick a term used in the cross-border space, we'll talk about what is life insurance, very high level, and whether you need it or not, and when you need it in a cross-border context.
All right. So, Jane, what is life insurance?
Okay, I like the way you just jumped into it, but that's perfect. So I'd like to think of life insurance as a contract between you, the insured, and the insurance company. And essentially, what they are saying is you pay us a certain amount of money over a certain period of time. Obviously, there's more into it. And God forbid you get hit by a bus, we'll give a boatload of money to the person you've appointed to, the beneficiary. So, in other words, think of it as we're just replacing your income. So, if you have kids or family overseas you're supporting and you are not there, what happens to them?
So, that's basically what life insurance is. Now, can we talk about what are all the different types of life insurance?
Okay, again, high level, this is a shorty. There's
Yes.
two types of life insurance that we see in the space so that we talk about. One is what's called term life insurance. In term life insurance basically gives you a certain amount of term, right? So you buy a policy for, let's say, 30 years once, and you pay more or less the same amount, although you do have different ways of paying it. Once the 30 years are over, you're done, sort of like the car insurance. If during those 30 years something happens to you, the beneficiary will get a payout of whatever the face value was. So let's say you do a term like 30 years, $1 million, 25 years into it, something happens to you, your beneficiaries will get the 1 million. And then the second type of life insurance is what's called permanent life insurance. And under this, there's two, there's whole life and there's universal, but I won't go into the details. The main difference is there's a death benefit on, but there's also what's called a cash value. So something happens to you, after a certain period of time, your beneficiaries will get a certain amount of that benefit, but there's also a certain amount of cash that goes along with that that you can actually take out at some point, depending on the details of the contract. These ones tend to be a little bit longer, so you can go to 100 years or something like that. And that's key for the next thing that I think maybe the next question you're going to ask me, but let's go on.
Yes, you guessed it. So, next, can we talk about who needs and what type of this insurance would be a good one, especially in the cross border context?
Okay, so the people that we work with, we have foreign nationals on work visas, and we know these work visas are non-immigrant visas. So the assumption is, or not the assumption, you're going to be leaving the country at some point at the end of your term, unless, of course, you end up getting the green card and you end up staying. And then we have the second group, they're already here on green cards or they're US citizens, but they have assets or they have ties overseas. And then you have US expats, which are US citizens or green card holders who live overseas. So when I think of that group, and this is where each case is very specific and needs to be custom designed, but at a very high level, if you're the main bread earner for the family, and you're supporting kids and you're supporting family overseas, term life most likely makes sense for you. Again, remember, we're just trying to replace you. We're not thinking of wealth building, we're just replacing you in terms of support. And so if you're working, you're a W2 employee, term life makes a lot of sense. The only difference is, or the key thing to watch out for is this term life insurance from a company that's willing to pay to your beneficiaries, regardless of where they live. And those are the type of companies that we use in our practice. And so as long as you continue paying the premiums, and we can talk about how you do that, you end up leaving the country, you continue paying, 20 years down the road, something happens to you, these US companies should still be able to pay your beneficiaries that amount. So that's probably the best case for term life, and it's almost what I advise everybody to get. The second case, the permanent, the universal, the whole life portion of it, the best case scenario for it when you're in a cross-border context is if you become an NRI, non-resident hate to use the word alien, but that's what IRS uses. You know what I mean. And you're not in the US anymore, and you have what's called US sider's assets. So this is, let's say, shares, property, and you're not here. There's a very high possibility that your estate taxes, the exemption you have is K, not the current 15 million that almost everybody else has. So if your exemption is only 60K, what this means is, God forbid something happens to you, your family most likely will have to sell everything because they need to pay 40% taxes on anything over 60K. So this is a really good use case for a permanent contract because you want it to go on for a long time. But of course, you'd want to make sure you find the right people to design this for you. So something happens to you, there's these estate taxes your family needs to pay. The life insurance will pay out because remember, at that point, it's not going to be taxed. It covers the taxes and your family can enjoy the money. And so those are probably the two use cases that I can think of right now, contrasting use cases in the cross-border context when it comes to life insurance. There's a whole lot of other use cases, but I think those are probably the two main ones that would apply to just about everybody in this space. Does that answer your question?
Yes, that perfectly answers all our questions, and I'm sure it answers our question on what is English for life insurance. So now that we learned about that in this shorty episode, thanks for listening, friends, and thanks for stopping by. If you like the content we share, please go to our website, theiamcafe.com, and subscribe to our newsletter, and you will know ahead of time when our episodes are dropping. So thanks for stopping by.
Bye.
Bye.